In this video you will learn 7 top secrets for writing epic cinematic percussion like this. Tip number 1. Main beats focus. So let me show you this by demonstrating the first track here, Deep Cinematic Percussion. Sounds like this. So if we take a look in the piano roll, you can see there's lots of stuff going on, but the first tip, main beats focus, means that you have a underlying core groove, which in most cases will be provided by the low percussion. So you have them right here. So if I just, let's say, if I select these and then invert selection and then mute everything else, this is the main beat. Okay, and then it goes on and on for that. And you should always respect this main beat. So when you see these other layers here, if we check, so we can see them by region color. Let's see if I select both of them, like so. You can see they are bum, dum, dum. So these added notes are creating some variation, but you can see the main focus is on that main groove, those main beats. And you should think about this on every track you add. Always focus on respecting that main beat, the main groove. Okay, tip number 2 is use Fortissimo accents. So Fortissimo means the loudest dynamics. So if we once again go in here, let's unmute those notes again, like so. And let's watch the velocities. So you can see this main groove here, the main beats are more red. So those are higher velocities, as you can see here also. And even when you layer, you can use louder accents. Go and take a look on this other track here. The main groove here is louder, so go into 100 plus Fortissimo. Probably a bit louder on this one. So you get a more... You really hear those beats coming out louder and more accented. So Fortissimo accents, louder accents on especially that main groove, the main beats. Tip number 3, complete triple range. And I call this triple range because I basically divide the range, the register of instruments and sounds into either low-end, mid-range, or high-end instruments. So in this case, these 2 tracks are creating the low and low mids, and this one as well. And then you get into the mid percussion of things here. Right? Some hand drums and stick hits, and then into the high end, which is hi-hat, cymbals. And that added air and shimmer, because this way you get the full range, the triple range, complete triple range. Okay, that's tip number 3. Tip number 4, full depth dimension. So by depth, there are 2 aspects. First, the stereo spacing, how wide they are in the stereo stage. And in some plugins, you can actually set it in the plugin itself, like this, width, basically making it wider in the stereo field. If you listen to this, let me put it in the middle first. And then once I drag this out, you will hear it becoming wider in the stereo stage. Until you're happy. And so you should not only have everything super wide. To get the best benefit, the most impact, some sound should be more closer to the middle. I opted to use these drums here more in the middle stereo field. And in this case, the plugin or library Damage didn't have it, so I'm using a stereo imager plugin. You should not be afraid of actually decreasing the stereo width in this case. So if we listen to it in the middle position, you can see here, but you can drag it more to the middle, which makes it more focused right here in front of you. So some sounds can be more like that, like a bass drum perhaps, or snare, whatever you want. So you have variation and stereo depth. But the other dimension, the depth dimension, is in the close to far away, which you can use in microphones positions for and mixes. So you can see this, you have close, mid, far rooms. You can mix this using various ranges from closer to far away. So in this case, I opted to have more ambient and room mics and less of the close mics. So you get that deep sound. That's why I call the track Deep Cinematic Percussion, because I wanted these drums, which is another library, to be more upfront. So I actually muted. Let me actually show you this. Like so. If we listen to this in solo first, that's how it sounds. But I actually purged and muted the hall mic, so it's only close and room mics, and then I increased the close mics so it gets closer and more. You hear it's like the drum is closer to you. And of course I used the width here, decreased it to have it more focused. And that way you get the benefit of both the depth of the first track here and the more upfront sound of these drums and percussion. Without it, it sounds a bit washed out, but with it you get that added impact of these close impact. The mid percussion here, I decided to have quite wide stereo staging with, but let's see. Yeah, I deactivated the internal reverb to have it not too much depth, because I wanted that clackiness and more focused sound of those sticks. And then for the hi-hats and cymbals, since these are using actually an acoustic drum kit in this case, so not cinematic cymbals or anything, it's Superior Drummer here. So listen to this. It's like just a drum room. In this case, I added an extra reverb on top, and then you can always mess around with the, the decay, the length of the reverb, how much you blend it in, and also if you want to filter out the low end, which I recommend in most cases for reverb. But anyway, comparing to this, but with the reverb, you get more depth, again, mixed in with a more drier sound. Again, that you get a fuller range of depth dimensions. So that is tip number 4. Tip number 5, remember the silence. So by silence, I actually mean that the gaps between the notes, I always teach this, by the way, is equally important as the notes or sounds themselves. Meaning, if you can actually see it here in front of you, if you just zoom in here, look, the big gap here and here, that's a huge space because it lets the ambience, the depth, the reverb and sound decay be heard as well. And especially important it is to space out the main accents, the main beat. So you have bam, dam, dam. You can always fill them up like I did here with other drums, but you should have some air. Remember this air between the notes. Otherwise, it becomes way too messy. So altogether, I mean, even if you check in both of these tracks, there's always some gaps of silence in between. That's how you create the pattern of, it can be percussion or any other rhythmic instrument. You need space in between, otherwise it's just a straight line. You need that to create the rhythmic pattern. Okay, so tip number 6 is timing variation. And there's 2 aspects of this. The first one is to either record the percussion manually and then don't use full quantization. So if I zoom in, let's say this part here, don't go 100%. Leave some variation. For percussion, I'm usually within 70 to 90%. Just some random variation which create that human aspect of it. But the other thing is, this is a bonus tip, by the way, a little secret I will share with you now, and that is that you can actually use, if your DAW has a negative delay, you can actually add a delay or minus or plus on any track to skew it. So it basically pushes it forward or backwards in time, the entire region. So everything will be like, this will be slightly before the beat or after the beat. And I opted in this case to have the upfront sounds here. So these ones and the hi-hats and cymbals 5 milliseconds before the grid, and these deeper drums 5 milliseconds after. And it might not sound like much, and it's not really, but this way you get that initial attack. I recommend to use this for the more upfront instruments, the accented percussion here. The transient in those will be more clear if you use this little secret tip here, because you hear the accent, the beat, the transient, just a hint before the other tracks. Okay, so that's tip number 6. Tip number 7 is parallel processing. So the most usual case for this is actually parallel compression, which I believe you heard about. So I actually, for percussion, often use this both on the individual tracks as well as the entire group. So let me show you this. On this cinematic percussion here, many compressors you can actually use this. It's basically mixing, like a mix knob, like a reverb, a blend of the dry, uncompressed sound with the fully compressed sound. And by using this with a blend like this, you can go harder on the compressor. So if we put this on 100%, you will see how much compression. You can go quite high, like it compresses a bit harder. It's almost slamming the drums. But when you blend it in parallel like this, you basically get the best of both worlds. So both the fully compressed with the compressed sound. And I also use this with this plugin, which is a compressor and a saturator. So I set it at 50% here. Let me show you. If we go out here again, so this sound here. So you can go with the saturation. Let's say I just go all in with this 100% high compression. So it's super saturated. So if you have this on 100%, it's super distorted. And then you can blend it in. But this is, of course, going overboard. Let's go back a bit here. So on 100% wet now, let's say you're happy with the sound, but it's a bit too hot, a bit too distorted and compressed. Then you can dial it in like 50-50 or so. And you get that great blend. And then finally, I recommend using it on the drum or percussion bus, like a bus plugin. So I use a compressor here as well in parallel mode. But always be careful when you use it on buses. Here you cannot go as extreme as on the individual tracks. But even so, you can see it's going on pretty good there. And then I blended it. I usually use 50-50 for parallel compression or parallel processing as a starting point. So those are my 7 top secrets for epic percussion like this. If you want to learn more, you can join some of my courses with special discounts in the video description. And I will see you guys in the next video. Now choose which video you are going to watch next. Or you can check out the amazing bonuses in the video description.